You thought it was another figure review, but it was me, DIO. Yeah, I'm sorry, that's the best I can come up with. So these figures are from a line called Super Action Statues, which makes all the other articulated 1/12 scale JoJo figures that you see a lot of. They also do figures of characters from Fist of the North Star and Ruby, but they're mostly known for their JoJo figures. And today we'll be taking a look at the High DIO and the World figures. But before we go any further, I like to say that the DIO figure I'm reviewing is the high version of the character, named after he got high off of Joestar blood, which means I don't have his normal Part 3 outfit, nor do I have Part 1 DIO either. That, and I'm not looking at the various repaints of him and his stand. With that all being said, let's take a look at them. First up is DIO. The painting and sculpting of this figure is pretty good. Considering the fact that a majority of JoJo characters are ridiculously buff, the sculpting for the muscles on said figure is done well. In fact, the sculpting for his shirt lets you know that he's jacked, and the straps are sculpted around his shoulders too. However, there is some really ugly paint bleeding right here, which is hard to look away from. Okay, if I'm being honest, I have no idea what kind of outfit this is, and I don't know if any other JoJo fans know what this is either. I've been a JoJo fan for years and I still don't know what this is, but why am I asking these questions if there are a lot more bizarre outfits out there? We would be here all day. As for the pants, they have differently sculpted pant legs with one side's wrinkles being different from the other. The heart-shaped knee pads are painted in a shiny teal, which is a bit of a contrast from the show since they're green. However, I don't know why they're like this considering the original outfit figure did use green. Actually, anything that appears teal on here is supposed to be green. Moving towards the shoes, they're painted in a nice shiny gold, and moving back up the body, the cufflets on the wrists are also painted in that gold too. However, it isn't exactly the cleanest as there's a little bit of paint bleed right here. Now, one detail that I'm glad got included is the Joestar birthmark from Jonathan's body. I'd be upset if they didn't include this. At the top of Jonathan's used body is DIO's head. I'm surprised that despite the scale of the head, there's a lot of painted detail on it. The eyes, the eyebrows, the lips, and even the earrings are all painted cleanly. Although I am upset that they didn't give him any green lipstick. So overall, the figure looks spot on. Now let's move on to his stand, the World. Just like his user, the World is also painted and sculpted very well. This holy diver has an interesting blend of muscle and mechanical spots on his design. For example, the tubes on his neck and parts of his legs give him a more mechanical appearance, whereas his muscles bulging out from his abs, arms, and legs makes him look more organic. I know that I mentioned the legs twice, but I was mostly referring to the gray parts here at the calf. Actually, any of the gray that you see here looks more organic than the yellow. Speaking of which, the yellow on the figure is a bit darker than it is in the show, but it isn't so bad. There's also some nice shading on the body too. Among the yellow and gray, the green on the chin, elbows, and knees all stick out, although I don't understand why he was designed with hearts on his crotch. It's just one of those things in JoJo that I really shouldn't be asking because we'll be here all day. Now, one interesting thing to note here is the detail on the knees and ankles. It may look like the joints are ratcheted, but unfortunately they're not. Moving up towards the hands, the sculpted design on the back of them is unpainted, which is a bit disappointing since the knuckles are painted. This also goes for his alternate hands. Why they were able to paint small details like the eyes but not the back of the hands is beyond me, because I'm surprised they were able to paint the eyes so well in the first place. Lastly, the oxygen tanks on the back look alright. They may look small in comparison to the body because they are. However, according to official character sheets, they're even smaller, so technically speaking, they're actually bigger than they're supposed to be. Although I don't really know what the actual size of these things are because on the back of the manga they're depicted as a lot bigger. That's what she said. So overall, the World looks pretty good. Now I understand the color scheme for JoJo characters are different in many other pieces of media, and can change during certain scenes in the anime, but when it comes to the depictions of characters, especially animated ones in figure form, I like seeing them with their animation accurate colors. If their colors are animation accurate, then it feels like I'm holding the character, because that's what I want. To me, the closer the figure looks like what it does on screen, the more it looks and feels like the character, if that makes any sense. I know that I complained about how DIO uses teal instead of green and how the World doesn't look as bright as he does in the anime, but we've could have had the manga colors of the World, which is just yellow, so I'm not really that upset about it. He still looks fine to me. Of course, when it comes to these JoJo figures, they've got to be posable. I mean, come on, they're JoJo figures. You need them to pose. So how good are they at their job? Well, to demonstrate, I'll be using the World to show most of the posability of these figures, as they're both similar. However, there are some differences between the two. The head can rotate, can look up and down, as can the neck. DIO can do the same, but his hair gets in the way for a full rotation.
Oh crap.
The chest, along with the waist, can lean forwards and arc back, but not by much. The world has an extra section for his torso, but it's a little loose. Dio doesn't have that, and when he bends forwards, there's a gap in between his chest and waist.
Also, both figures have a swivel at the waist.
The world's oxygen tanks can swivel, but the pegs that connect them to the back are pretty small and have the potential to break.
That and they're a bit loose.
The shoulders can rotate and can move in and out. Unfortunately, they can't move back and forth. The world has a swivel at his bicep, but Dio lacks that. The elbows can double bend, the wrist can move up and down or side to side, and the hands can do a 360. As for Dio, his elbow tends to pop off, which is pretty annoying. Now as for hand articulation, the way that it works is something that I don't really like. So the hands connect to the wrist by this peg that you plug them into, but it would have been better had they gone with a ball joint. That way the hands can have a much better range of movement. Also, the wrists on the world can't rotate around, unlike Dio's. So if I tried anything with them, they might break.
Also, whatever these things are on Dio can move up and down, but they tend to untab and it gets really annoying to plug them back in.
The thighs can swivel and the knees can double bend.
Also, whatever these things are on the hips can move around.
The world can kinda do a spread, but it isn't as good as Dio's. The ankles can swivel and bend. Finally, the toes can bend, but not by much. It's kinda pathetic to be honest. In Dio's case, the hinge on his foot broke, and I don't even know how that happened.
I had to super glue it on there, so it can't even bend anymore.
The posability of these figures ain't bad, but given how certain joints are tighter than others, makes posing them a bit of a struggle. The fact that I have to be cautious whenever I pose them makes me extremely worried when handling them. That, and given how there are certain parts on the figures that limits their posability or just lacks certain joints, makes it a bit disappointing.
I don't understand why stands have more articulation than their users. It just doesn't make any sense. Why not just give them the same amount of articulation?
In terms of accessories, you get a few interchangeable hands. With Dio, you get a pair of open hands, clawed hands, fists, a pointing hand, and this special hand. Upon first glance, it looks like another pointing hand, but there's this little nub at the end of it. What's this for? Well, it's for this special blood effect part. So now you can recreate Dio enjoying his greatest high. This is all well and good, but I'm a tad bit disappointed. I was hoping we get some additional blood effect parts to replicate the scene of him eagerly clawing into his flesh. Of course, the obvious accessory we're missing here is his road roller. However, that was released separately as a paper craft, which was also freaking huge. So I had to find an alternative. He also comes with an additional head to swap out. Yeah, so because of how the proportions in JoJo are in comparison to other anime designs, the heads are a lot smaller. You get a neutral face and a sadistic grin. You also get a special exclamation part with written on it, and even comes with a stand for it.
However, it doesn't come with its own base.
As for the world, you get fists, clawed hands, and a singular pointing hand. I have no idea why this exists. I don't even know where it comes from, or what it's a reference to. I checked the manga, the OVA, the anime, and even some of Araki's artwork with the world in it, and none of them have this pointing hand.
Although I don't own any of the JoJo art books, so they might be in there. All I did was just check the wiki.
Is this supposed to be a reference to Jotaro, and how he likes to point, and how the world is the same type of stand as Star Platinum? Or am I thinking about this too much?
Wait, I think I know what this might be for. Yeah, there we go. Let the voice of love take them higher.
Anyways, he comes with this neutral head and a yelling head. You also get a stand for both figures, with 3 hinge joints and a base with the JoJo title text engraved on it. They can also split in half and can connect to other stand bases. If I'm being honest, I wish these guys came with just a little bit more, like an extra head or a few more hands for the world. But overall, the accessories for these figures ain't bad. Finally, let's scale them out. They're within that 6-inch range.
However, the world is slightly taller.
Here's a fellow time-stopping knife thrower, the Figma Saki Izuyoi, NECA SOS Goji, Amber Collection's Velociraptor, and of course, here he is next to the Super Action Statues Part 3 Jotaro. He works really well with him. Now, do I recommend these figures? Well, when it comes to these kinds of figures, it's kinda hard to say. I recommend you get both the stand and its appropriate user, but you could buy them separately. However, to me, they'll feel incomplete without one another. As for Dio and the world, High Dio is a bit meh for me. It's not that I hate it or anything, I just prefer his original Part 3 design before he went on Joestar Blood, but I'm still okay with what I got. As for the world, I recommend this one if you're more interested in the anime's color scheme. However, I must warn you, you'll have to reject roughly $100 each for these figures. That, and there aren't any alternatives out there. The Super Action Statues line is really the only line out there as of me making this video that makes articulated JoJo figures. And that about wraps things up. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video, whenever that'll be. Hey, if you want to know how much money a super action statue figure costs, just count all of the bread I've eaten.